Survival, a three-part story that first broadcast in March of 1989. And what's particularly unusual about this episode is, or this story, was that it was technically the end of Doctor Who. At least for a while. 7 years. So what's the basic plot of this one? You've got the Doctor, played at this point by actor Sylvester McCoy, and his companion Ace, played by Sophie Aldred. They've just returned to Ace's kind of hometown or home village of Perivale, under kind of her own steam. As Ace said, she just wondered what everyone in her old town or old place was up to. However, when they get back there, they found the place strangely empty, and a lot of the people that Ace knew have either moved away or they've seemingly gone missing. While they investigate around to try and find anyone that they know, the Doctor becomes suspicious, in that there appears to be a suspicious black cat roaming around the place, and whenever it appears, seemingly other people go missing. So they kind of have a search around, but discover that the cat, which is some kind of demonic being, is using its power to transport people to another planet inhabited by the cheetah people. Ace ends up getting transported there herself, and the Doctor has to try and find a way to get them both back home, but also discovers on the cheetah planet his old nemesis, the Master, played for the final time by actor Anthony Ainley. They also, along their way, encounter various other characters, including a selection of kids whom Ace knew from the old town, such as a kid named Derek, a young man named Mitch, and a girl named Shrila, who Ace had quite a good friendship with, as well as a self-defense teacher named Patterson, played by Julian Holloway, who takes his job maybe a little too seriously. But, yeah. For a while, this was actually the end of Doctor Who. This was the last story ever broadcast in 1989, and we wouldn't see Doctor Who again until the movie in 1996. Now, in a way, watching this episode, it is kind of nice, given that this was the last story broadcast of Doctor Who proper, of the main series. But in another way, it's kind of a little unsatisfying. It's satisfying in some ways, but then unsatisfying in others, and I'm not entirely sure why. I mean, maybe I just thought, after seeing... I've seen the clip of the actual ending of the show, when the Doctor and Ace are walking off together half a dozen times online, but then actually sitting down and watching the episode proper, I kind of thought that, I don't know why, I just kind of assumed that the ending would take place kind of like a sunset over a distant planet. Now, that would have probably been a nice way, but then looking at it, the final shot kind of takes place overlooking a park, and it's just like, it's not quite as beautiful as we're foretold. But the episode does have some good points as well. For example, Anthony Ainley's role as the Master. I mean, I know he's not going to be everyone's favourite interpretation of the Master, but he does pretty fairly well here. There's a kind of urgency both amongst him and amongst the other characters who end up there, that if they stay there too long, they eventually start to develop the effects of the cheetah people. They will eventually turn into cat-like beings. I mean, Ace sort of gets that early on and ends up making a friendship with a cheetah person named Kara, who she seems to enjoy the hunt with, which is kind of nice to see. And just seeing Anthony Ainley, I mean, with his kind of cat-like state, with kind of cat-like teeth, and while the yellow contact lenses are a bit hokey, but yeah, you know what? He acts it well, and for a final confrontation with the Master, I think it's a fairly decent one. It's not the best episode they could have gone with, but you know what? It's pretty good. There was also following this episode and essentially the cancellation of the series, there was a bit of wonder of what happened with certain characters. I mean, while Sylvester McCoy would show up later on uh, at the start of the 1996 movie before handing it over to Paul McGann, and we would see the Master later on, well, in the movie and later on the show's run, fans were left wondering for years what had happened to Ace, and there's a lot of different theories that have gone around the internet and gone around fan fictions and the like. Fan fictions and news sites. I mean, supposedly one idea they had been planning before the series got cancelled was that Ace would eventually lead the Doctor to join the Prydonian Academy on Gallifrey. That would have probably been a nice view to take. And there was talk, seemingly around the internet for a while, that she was apparently going to appear in Series 6 of the Sarah Jane Adventures before Elizabeth Sladen's death. And it would apparently have shown what had happened to Ace, but I kind of like another route also taken by the Sarah Jane Adventures that kind of explains what happened to Ace. In the Series 4 episode Death of the Doctor, right at the very end, Elizabeth Sladen notes off certain other Doctor's companions. She looked them up and found out a bit about them, and one of them she mentions is a woman called Dorothy, who runs a company called A Charitable Earth and has raised billions. And if you take A Charitable Earth, it's fairly safe to assume that Ace eventually returned to Earth, started up a charity, and is doing quite well for herself. So, as I said, it's not necessarily the episode I would choose to end the show on, but once again, it is nice to see just a piece of Doctor Who history, and the episode that we ultimately ending on, and it's nice to kind of look back on it and think, yeah, that was probably okay for the time period, but then it shows why Doctor Who really needed to come back, why it needed to continue. Because really, after leaving, they couldn't really leave the show here. I mean, there would have been outrage. So, yeah. I don't think it's the best episode ever, but you know what? I think it's fairly good. I mean, I've heard people say that the best episode of the Seventh Doctor era is The Curse of Fenric, which maybe I'll have to check out sometime. But you know what? These are my thoughts on Survival from 1989. It's not the show that it's not the story that I would have personally chosen to end the show on, but you know what? It's nice to see the piece and nice to see how things were ultimately left in 1989. Anyway, the next one I'm hoping to review when I get the chance is The Dalek Invasion of Earth from the 1960s. When I get there, I'll let you know. Until next time, see ya.